Welcome back, listeners, to a brand new episode of the New Standard. And you're checking out the program on April 30th, 2024. The title of the program this week is A is for Apple. And on this show, we are going to grade the Steeler draft. As always, if you want to participate in the show, go to YouTube, do a search for the New Standard and Lance Williams. Hit the like and subscribe button. You can also do a search for the New Standard and Neil Coulon, Neal Coulon, and do a like and subscribe. If you listen to the show via podcast, search for the show Steelers, the New Standard, Lance Williams, and or Neil Coulon. Also, you can interact with us in the show on X and any other social media platform except for TikTok, because TikTok is about to get banned anyway. So I'm not on there. So you see my X handle, the New Standard or the New Standard 13. You can hit me there as well. And all I want to say, in the words of the abstract poetic Q-Tip, congratulations to a Tribe Called Quest going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Steeler fans, relax yourself. Please settle down. Now, I know you guys, if you're a Tribe Called Quest fans, you thought he was saying, relax yourself, girl, P. Sinclair. But no, he's actually saying, relax yourself, please settle down. So, on this show, I want to jump into how I grade the draft. And if you listen to the last show, you know that I've had struggles on trying to figure out how to grade the draft because I tend to, you know, lean towards the analytical, being that I'm a graduate from Carnegie Mellon. So I'm going to jump into how I grade the draft. I've kind of figured it out. The Steelers draft grade, what I think it is, what draft pick do I think has the highest ceiling? So, whatever draft pick you think has the highest ceiling, please put it in the chat. What draft pick do you think has the highest floor? Please put it in the chat. What was your favorite draft pick? I'm going to tell you mine. Any head scratchers? And what do you think the starting offensive line will be? And just some things that the Steelers need to do moving forward. Now, again, make sure you like and subscribe to the program now. In terms of how do I grade a draft? Now, I'll say this, and I went into a long diatribe on last show about struggling with trying to grade something based on something that hasn't happened yet. And that hasn't happened yet is those guys playing. Because I guess when you tend to lean towards the analytical, it makes more sense because 1 + 1 = 2. You put these two things together, you have an outcome. It's clear, it's mathematical, it's logical, it's structured. And so I tend to fall in that lane, in that vein. So I tend to struggle when it comes to assigning a grade to something that is not happened or going to occur. So, I'm trying to figure this whole thing out. And big up to Rob. Rob gives the Steeler class an A+. Big up to him. And I'll say this. This is where I started to loosen up. I've started to loosen up. I've let some things go. First of all, it's all subjective. So who cares if I'm right or wrong? Honestly, I could tell you that this draft grade or this draft class was the best class in history. And if I was absolutely dead wrong, I'm never going to admit that I thought that this draft class was great. I mean, who on radio, who does podcasts, who does shows, who's accountable for anything that they say? Any prediction that they get wrong. So it doesn't really matter. So I have to, and being an analytical person, you kind of get trapped in, you want to be right. You want to be right. 1 + 1 = 2. 2 + 2 = 4. 2 cubed is, I'm not going to tell you. I'll let you guys figure that out. But you want to be right. And so with this, who cares if you're right? Nobody's right. Nobody gets it right. And getting it right isn't the big deal. It's just giving your thoughts and your opinions. So your criteria in terms of how you grade a draft could be based on, hey man, if all the names rhyme, whatever. if they address their team needs, if the whole class is athletic, whatever it could be whatever. It doesn't matter because it's just your opinion. And that's it. And also, the other thing I had to come to grips with is there are different time points to this. So it's appropriate to grade a draft day one, season one, season two, season three, and you can probably grade a draft class each year. And as the class plays more football, then you can start extrapolating on how good and how quality the class is based on actual football and winning and losing. But until you get to that point, you can grade it. It's fair. It doesn't have to be right. You can be wrong. Your criteria can be asinine. It could be great. It could be analytical. It could be mathematical. It could be spiritual. It could be anything. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Your criteria could be absolutely anything. So here are some of the things I'm going to use. And I'm going to borrow Ollie Howard's species criteria that he said on last week's show, on the last show, when he talked about scheme fit and finding players that fit a scheme. So that's one thing. When you take a look at that to try to judge a draft. Number two, I think in every draft, you've got to get multiple starters out of it. Now, that's at least two. I think if you have a fantastic draft, you can get four. If you get any more than four, your team is probably the Carolina Panthers. And that's why you got so many starters, because you're ass cheeks. I mean, point blank, you're ass cheeks. Big up to Donovan Sign. What's up, boy? And if you're listening to the show, make sure you like and subscribe. So if you get more than six starters out of a draft, your ass cheeks or your draft is the 1974 Steelers draft, which is the best draft in the history of football. So for me, you find players that address your needs from a scheme perspective. Number two, you find anywhere from 2 to 4 starters. 3, your class is absolutely highly athletic. And number 4, your class reflects your personality. Now, if you look at all these things and you look at the Steelers class, Big Troy, offensive tackle, RAS 9.62. RAS ranked for his position group 7. Zach Frazier, the only player that the Steelers drafted in the yellow tier of RAS. So RAS is the relative athletic score. It's an athletic tool used to measure athleticism of players. If you're in the green tier, you're considered a great athlete. Anything less, you're average to below average. So if you're yellow, you're average. If you're 9.62 in the green tier, you're above average. Every Steeler draft pick is in the green tier except for Zach Frazier. Roman Wilson, 8.59, green tier, ranked 30th in his class. Peyton Wilson, absolute freak show athletically, ranked number 2 at the inside linebacker position. Mason McCormick, offensive guard, 9.96, RAS ranked 2. Freaky athlete. Logan Lee, defensive tackle, 9.2, RAS rank 11. Cornerback Ryan Watts, 9.12, RAS rank 6. Overall, the class is 9.15, and that ranks 3rd in terms of RAS score behind Philadelphia and Washington. So the class is freaky. So it scratches off that box. It's a freaky class. Freaky athletically. Now, in terms of the number one criteria, are you drafting players that address your needs from a scheme perspective? I think they did a fantastic job with that. I think and let me throw that in before I make my comment that I think they also found 3 starters in this draft class. So right there, the Steelers have checked off a couple of the criteria that I have set up for measuring a class and grading a class. Troy Fontenot, Big Troy, Troy Deuce, Troy 2, Resurrection Troy, Troy my man, Troy F. He's going to start a tackle. Watch his film. He's nasty. He's tenacious. Zach Frazier. I mean, hey, when you put West Virginia and Western Pennsylvania together, oh, that's nasty. Oh, that's nasty. That's nasty. And big up to the West Virginia, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. They the nastiest. They the toughest. They the hardest in the world. Don't mess with some West Virginia Steelers fans. Ain't that right, Jeff? Big up to Jeff Hartman and those guys. West Virginia Steelers fan. He's a hard-nosed, gritty dude, wrestler, plays with great leverage, great use of his hands, tough, 4-year starter, played a ton of football, hard as nails. Then you got Roman Wilson, who I think is going to be a starter day one, because the one thing I think the Steelers do need to address is the wide receiver position. So they've checked off the box where they've got freaky athletes. They got guys that will start. I think they had 3 starters that they drafted that are a scheme fit. They have a hard-nosed guys in Fontenot and Frazier that match the personality and the toughness. And if you heard some of the interviews from Roman Wilson, these guys are Steeler guys. Peyton Wilson, the freaky athleticism, Mason McCormick, the toughness that you see him play with on film. These guys check off that culture box. And last but not least, the class is freaky athletic. So it's easy for me to sit here again. And this is without them playing a snap. And it's not about them playing a snap. It's not about them playing a snap. Not about them playing yet. But if you look at my criteria, and that's the beauty of this, I don't have to be right. I can be wrong. Big up Coach Corey. What's happening? I know you're not a Roman Wilson fan. Put that on the chat. Let's talk about why you're not. Put that on the chat. And also, like Neil said, it's a feeling that you want to get from this class. And I think the Steelers did a smashing job in this class. I'm going to give this class an A. I'm going to give this draft class an A. And I think, the grade that I'm giving it matches what a lot of people are giving it in social media, and guys that are giving it, that are pundits, guys much smarter than me across the board. This draft class is being lauded as one of the Steelers' best in the last several years. Because I think primarily when you look at this class, it's going to rebuild that offensive line. It's going to rebuild that foundation. And I think you only go as far as your offensive line. The offensive line, I think, sets the foundation and the tone of your football team. And you've got to be physical up front. Got to be physical up front. James Galway said it right. A lunch pail crew. They got a lunch pail crew. They got a hard-nosed crew. And we all know with the fortification of their offensive line, you can see that they want to run the football. They want to get back to physical, hard-nosed, tough, gritty Steeler football. So for me, I'm giving a draft an A. This is my first time I've graded a draft like a couple of days after, and I'm going to get a draft a grade of an A. One thing I want to jump into, and before I do that, please like and subscribe to the program. Hit me with a super chat if you feel like it. Please hit me with a super chat. And big up to you, Corey. And Corey, our resident line coach, our expert, our offensive line coach, all 3 linemen are studs. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And the cool thing about having rebuilding the fortification of your offense and your offensive line is when you have a solid offensive line, you can bring in different types and styles of quarterbacks, and you can play a variety of offensive football because you can block it. And we know, Corey, you're a Buckeye. He's a Wolverine. We get it. I feel the same way about Stanford players. So I get it. But I want to toss this question to everybody that's on the chat now. What draft pick, these 2 questions, do you think has the highest ceiling, and which draft pick has the highest floor? Now, let me give you the definition of that. And I looked up in this article about high floor and high ceiling because I've always tried to figure out this definition, but I just wanted to research it. So this is an article. Uh, Interestingly enough, it's an article about basketball players, but I think it's applicable to football as well. And a high floor player is described as a player with a high floor is a player that you know exactly what you're going to get from them. But because of some limitations, either with skill set or a physical limitation, you're not expecting them to really improve beyond what you're getting. That makes sense to you guys? I think that's a very solid definition. High floor guy. You can win a lot of football games with a high floor guy. When I think of high floor guys, the first guy I think of is the quarterback in Atlanta that got upset because they drafted a quarterback, Kirk Cousins. That's who I think about when I think of a high floor player. That's what I think about. James, and that's a great point. And we'll jump to that, James Galway. James Galway said Dan McCullers. And it's funny. Now, let me ask you, James, you can reply in the chat. Are you saying that Dan McCullers was a high floor player? Or let me give you the definition from this article for high ceiling. Or is he a high ceiling player? And they define that as someone who you can see a pathway to them developing beyond what they currently are. This is almost always a player with impressive physical athletic ability that, if their skill set improves, could become a much better player. That is why the Steelers draft high RAS guys. Because if you get a high RAS player, I think physical characteristics and physical athletic ability gives you more of a higher ceiling. You have more room to grow. And so Nick said Dan McCullers was a high black male on the coach player. Yeah, I don't know how he lasted like 6 seasons. I have no idea how he lasted. So from my perspective, if you have high floor players, a majority of your roster is high floor, sprinkled in with high ceiling guys at particular positions, you can beat a lot of people. It is hard to reach your ceiling. Hell, ask Coach Hatcher. He's trying to get kids to reach their ceiling every day as a coach, and he'll tell you it's hard as hell. So it's hard to get kids to reach their high ceiling, let alone, it's hard to get adults, let alone, so it's tough. Give me guys that have a high floor mixed in with guys that are high ceiling. I'm going to give you an example of a high ceiling guy. A high ceiling guy is Josh Allen. Physical characteristics out the kazoo. Patrick Mahomes was also a high ceiling guy. Not necessarily these guys were high floor guys. These guys were high ceiling guys. And so Felicia chimed in, just like the He Big brothers. I'm happy to be here. That's right, baby. That's right. Corey also chimed in and said, we have 2 potential D1 guys. We are praying we can get them there. And it's tough to reach the high ceiling. That's why, Corey will tell you, give me a bunch of high floor guys, mixing a couple high ceiling guys at the right position, and it's good to go. We can win. We can do our thing. We can move on. We can move forward. And if you're listening to this show right now, I'm going to apologize to you because Maxie just pulled the heart out of all New York Knicks fans. So if you're listening to the show and watching the New York Knicks game, your heart got snatched out of your chest. But long story short, in this draft class, let me give you the names again. Troy Fox and Zach Frazier. And you will know if you listen to this show, I'm going to mispronounce Big Troy's name consistently. So I'm going to call him Big Troy, Troy 2, Troy Deuce. So we got Troy, Big Troy, Zach Frazier, Roman Wilson, Peyton Wilson, Mason McCormick, Logan Lee, and Ryan Watts. In your opinion, please hit on the chat. Who do you think is the high ceiling player? Who do you think is the high floor player? I think the high ceiling player, because of his measurables, is Peyton Wilson. I don't know much about the player, but what I've seen on tape and what I've seen on YouTube of him playing, he's freaky. He is absolutely freaky. The way he moves, somebody explain it to me. Again, you're listening to the New Standard. Please like and subscribe to the program. Hit the notification bell. How do you run that fast without an ACL ligament? I mean, if I took my ligaments out, I know I would be slower. What would he be running if he had an ACL? What would he like? What would he be doing if he had good knees? Like if he had good knees, he probably would have been a number one pick overall. I mean, the guy has an RAS, and that's part of being a high ceiling player is having those physical characteristics. The kid got a 9.89 RAS, ran a 4.4, second RAS rank in the class with no ACL. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That is absolutely stupid. So for me, he's the high ceiling player. And I'm just going to throw these two takes into one. My favorite draft pick and my guy with the highest floor, Zach Frazier. Zach Frazier is ready to roll. Zach Frazier is absolutely ready to roll. Zach Frazier is ready to roll week one. Just plug and play. Pop him in here and let him go. This guy is a pro. I don't think because of, some of his lack of athleticism, he has maybe the highest ceiling. Like, I can't recall. I forget the center's name from the Kansas City Chiefs, the outstanding center that had like a 10 RAS, had like the highest RAS score at any position across like 5 years. Now, because of, I think his lack of athleticism, he may not become the best center in a National Football League or a Hall of Fame guy like a Pouncey or somebody like that or Dermontti Dawson, but he's going to be damn good. And he's from West Virginia, which means he got a screw loose play for West Virginia. So all I need is a guy with a screw loose in the interior of the Steelers' offensive line. He nasty. That boy nasty. And Troy, too, is nasty as well. Them boys is nasty. They played a lot of football. And the funny thing is, when you see Mike Tomlin's press conference, when you talk about these two guys and these linemen, as Tomlin goes, his tape is fantastic. His tape is fantastic. His tape is fantastic. Also, to Corey's point, you can really tell about Frazier being a wrestler. And that, the last wrestler that they had that was awesome? Carlton Hasselrig. If he could be as good as a Rig, I mean, come on. He'll be awesome. McCormick's tape is nasty as well. I mean, these guys are just high ceiling guys. But for me in this class, he's a high floor guy that is going to be a foundational piece in the center of that offensive line. He's my favorite pick, and he's my high floor guy. Now, no draft is perfect. That's why we got to get to the head scratchers. Are there any head scratchers in this draft class for you? For me, there isn't. What is head scratching to me was the selection of McCormick. I was wondering why they hit that position back. And I want to take a look at Shebig's contract, and we'll talk about that in a future show. Maybe there was something with the contract. I think Lee was a bit of a head scratcher, like Corey said as well. But like you said, Corey, and like a lot of people have said, if you're going to head scratch, make sure you got an RAS of 9.2 and you rank 11th in terms of your RAS score in your position group. Error on freaky athleticism. If you're going to make an error on freaky athleticism. So that was my head scratcher, was that pick and McCormick. I would have liked them to get another wide receiver, and probably not, even if you wanted to get McCormick, and I'm fine with that because you add depth, you add flexible position flexibility. Uh, is maybe you don't draft Lee and you get another wide receiver. You get a developmental guy that's got a burner, that's got a high RAS, got some great measurables that you could possibly develop to be a great player or a solid player at the wide receiver position. Because at the end of all this, I think the Steelers still have a question at the wide receiver position. And there's been a lot of scuttlebutt on X from Brian McFadden about there's going to be some type of deal in play, give Omar some patience. Well, we'll see. I'm still not sold on the wide receiver position. But before we get out of here, here's my starting offensive line. Troy 2 at left tackle. Siamalu, left guard. Frazier at center. Daniels at right guard. And Broderick Jones at right tackle. Or you can flip the tackles. Those will be your 5 starting offensive linemen, I think, moving into the season. When you have a young offensive line, if these boys can play, you got foundational pieces for your offense to build and grow with. Listeners, please hit the chat. What's your grades? What's your grade for this Steeler draft? I'm giving this draft again. I'm giving it an A with the fact that nobody's going to hold me accountable if the draft stinks. No, I mean, hey, somebody might come to me and say, hey, you said the draft class was great. All those guys were a bust. Yes, I did. And guess what? I'm going to say it again. And you might be right, Felicia. It might have been clickbait. But I'm going to throw out a name that you guys might like at the wide receiver position. I saw this on X. Terry McLaurin. How would Terry McLaurin look in the black and gold? How would Terry McLaurin look? Yeah. How would Terry McLaurin look? Think about that. Imagine adding Terry McLaurin to the Steelers cast of characters on offense. Thank you, Felicia, with your grade A. I agree with you, Fifi. Corey, that'd be nasty, huh? Add Terry McLaurin, that'd be absolutely nasty. That would be nasty. And with your guy, Roman Wilson playing the slot. But with that, listeners, hey, man, I'm excited. I'm going to get this class an A. We'll see how it's all going to round out. But hey, now it's football time. Now these guys got to put on some pads, or excuse me, put on some shorts. And again, if you are a fan of the program, please like and subscribe. Hit me with a super chat. A is for Apple, and A is also for the grade that I am giving the Steelers draft. But with that, we're going to conclude the program. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And thank you for listening. So please tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. Go Steelers.